Good afternoon, Singla sir. We may start now.
Very good afternoon. We have a lot of people. I think some 30-40 people have already joined. Let's wait for 30 more seconds. Yeah, very good afternoon, friends. We have 60 people who are already there on the panel. I think Professor Madhuvij is also joining today. I hope she has already joined. Do we start, Zuhaib?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Friends, very good afternoon. This is the first of the series of webinars on behalf of faculty FMS Alumni Association, which is the body of graduates of FMS, the B School of University of Delhi. To start the series, we are privileged to have our own Sudhir Sethi, Mr. Sudhir Sethi, who is the founder and chairman of Chiratae Ventures India Advisors. Formerly, it was known as IDG Ventures India, which is a leading VC firm advising assets of about US dollars 470 million based out of Bangalore, that's India. One of the better known venture capital funds. Since 1998, Sudhir and his team have advised on investments into 80 plus firms across digital consumer, enterprise software, fintech, and healthcare sectors. Key investments include Flipkart, FirstCry, Lenskart, Bazaar, Curefit, Manthan, Newgen, Netsuite, Agrostar, Jatra, Mindtree Consulting, among many others. Sudhir is recognized as one of the leading venture capitalists in the country. He has been named among the top 10 IT professionals by DataQuest and by Bloomberg UTB as visionary venture capitalist. He served as advisor on the Technology Innovation and Productivity Council of the GMR Group. He also served on the Executive Committee of Indian Venture Capital Association, Investment Committee of UTI Ventures, on the board of Ascent Capital, and on the board of advisors at NS Raghavan Center for Entrepreneurship. I am Bangalore. This is one thing which I have not liked many times because I wanted FMS, his alma mater, to be the first one to be benefiting from his experience, but our mistake and our loss. But we are happy that he is guiding such institutions of national and international repute. With over 38 years of experience, Sudhir has served at various leadership positions at HCL, Wipro, as well as country head of Walden International India. He holds a BTech degree and an MBA degree. We are proud of the fact that he did his MBA from FMS Delhi. In fact, we are more proud of the fact that we were batchmates in the same class at FMS. Sudhir has been a great friend of FMS, and he has always supported FMS, all its activities, Alumni Association, and the students' activities. He has a wonderful understanding of the venture capital domain of the country. I still remember one of the sentences that he spoke at one of conventions at FMS. For a venture capitalist, the only God is ROI. I'm 100% certain that in today's webinar, which is first of the series, that is opportunities and challenges for startups under COVID-19, we are going to get guided by Sudhir in a very detailed manner about the opportunities that post-COVID-19 a country like India will offer to startups, and a word post-COVID-19 will offer. We never thought of a person better than Mr. Sudhir Sethi to come and help us out understanding the business of startups, and that too post-COVID-19. We are very ably assisted by Mr. Zuhaib Khan, who is FMS 2019 as the host of the webinar, and assisted by Nitin and Dheeraj Jain as moderators. We welcome all the participants, particularly the faculty members. I understand that a few faculty members of FMS should also be joining us today, our batchmates and all the participants. Over to you, Zuhaib. Take care of it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I really welcome heartily both Sudhir and Singla, sir. And I'm thankful to Dheeraj and Nitin to help us out in this webinar. Sudhir, since we have a lot of questions and we were crowdsourcing questions, as you are aware, we have a long list as of now. We'll quickly jump into this. So how have been the last 4 or 5 weeks for you? And obviously this is a black swan we are looking at. Nothing of this sort has happened, at least in our lifetime. And how have you been coping up? How have your portfolio companies been coping up? Over to you.
Well, first, Dr. Singla, Zuhaib, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back on the FMS channel. FMS is very dear to us. For me personally, as another colleague of Dr. Singla and myself was my wife Shalini. She was also from FMS. So it brings back many memories when I speak to Dr. Singla. Last few weeks, very interesting. There is obviously stress in the economy, but this is the 4th time, at least I'm facing a downturn since investing started for me in 1998. And this is very different. The first 3 downturns were financial in nature. So they were single dimensional downturns. This is not a single dimensional downturn. This is multidimensional. This is, financial in nature. This is economic. This is GDPs of not one country, but many countries. This is political in nature. This is health in nature. And it seems to be, it's a very long drawn, let's say, stressful period, which, entrepreneurs definitely will go through. It's also setting the norm for many changes in terms of the way industries and businesses will work. Work from home is a very classic example of some of these changes would be very permanent. We obviously are seeing entrepreneurs bringing out new models of business and revenue. We are also seeing innovation rampant right now in this period of last 8 weeks. New products and new services being launched, which actually were not there earlier. And I'm also seeing a tremendous amount of agility while there is obviously efforts being made by entrepreneurs as well as investors in the ecosystem to survive. So I think this is absolutely in a very interesting time. I must add that if I talk to not only the portfolio of companies where we have invested, but also the companies in the ecosystem, thousands of entrepreneurs in the ecosystem, what comes out is one very loud, resounding message: we will overcome. I think that's a spirit which is resounding and much louder than I've ever seen in the last 3 downturns.
I think the message that you just spoke about, "we'll overcome," is clearly written all over, right from, as you mentioned, work from home practices to e-coms, e-groceries coming up in maybe a matter of days. We have seen a lot of food tech moving to delivery tech now. We have actually a question on this as well. So which kind of sectors or startups do you think will benefit most out of this COVID-19 and the changes that we are seeing in consumer behavior? Actually 2 questions. So one is, which startups will come, which sectors will come out flying, and which sort of consumer behavior will stick for a longer term? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the way we see it right now is anything which involves social contact, where social distancing is required, those businesses, A. And secondly, where there is finance involved. And third, where there is supply chain issues involved, physical supply chain issues, all these are under stress overall. So to us, logistics, non-essential e-commerce, non-essential commerce in the market space, as well as the fintech sector, travel and hospitality are what I call red sectors. What we are seeing is in many of these, the digital sector, and whether it's in B2B or B2C, is actually ramping up. We've seen that in many of our companies where entrepreneurs have introduced digital products and digital services, and I'll come to the examples of that. Those sectors and those companies are actually having growing on a daily basis now. The second sector, which I think is growing right now, is healthcare. This is, there are a billion people in India, and healthcare doesn't reach them with a few doctors. So the question is, how do you reach healthcare? How do you reach? And the current scenario is forcing both the supply chain as well as the consumer to change in getting healthcare to the larger community. The SaaS area is seeing upticks where B2B companies are wanting to become more efficient. We are seeing BPO becoming uptick here. Whenever there is a sector going down or economy going down, consumers flock to the phone and call up their BPO and say, hey, when can I get my money back, or when can I get my ticket back? So if the travel industry goes down to zero, or the e-commerce industry goes down to zero, which it did, by the way, right? Hospitality goes down to zero, then consumers call up. So the BPO sector is actually shooting up right now, and technology plays a big part. And the last but not the least is the deep tech sector. I think India is increasingly going to play a very big role in deep technologies coming out which solve real problems overall. Let me give you an example of digital. One of our companies is into the fitness space. Actually, a couple of companies are into the fitness space, namely Curefit and Healthify Me. So live classes at home, live nutrition classes at home are a very good example of digital play at home increasing, and people are paying for it right now. If you look at the digital play, it also enables the companies who were operating within the country to actually now go outside the country. And again, Healthify Me is a very good example where in the health space, they've gone international. If you take the health space, again, a company like HealthFlix, a small company, or even carefit.com is enabling live doctor consultations. And these are shooting up on a daily basis. So, these are some of the examples where people used to drive down to a doctor. There is actually no need. 60-70% of general practitioner consultations are possible on video, and that's what's happening. Interestingly, if you see today, and that's the data from one of our companies, 1/3 of general practitioners are, or maybe 1/3 to maybe half, are actually not doing anything right now. They're sitting at home. And to that extent, how do they reach their clients, and how do patients reach their doctors? There's only ways live classes. One of our companies called Unifor, who's doing extremely well because they service the BPO sector, and they've started picking up more orders in the market space. The gaming sector in the market, because gaming has shot up with people now sitting at home. So I can give you so many examples of companies who used to be in the same space. So for instance, Play Simple is in the gaming space, and they used to be there, but their uptick is going up on a daily basis. Some companies have pivoted to the digital space, so their uptick is going up right now. And this is what I call a bolt-on, because if there's a physical play already, either through stores or through gyms or in the market space where physical contact is required, if you are increasing your digital play, as and when the physical play comes in, it becomes a bolt-on. So actually what's happening right now in some companies, and I would say in our portfolio, it's about 15 odd companies out of 45 active companies, which is not a small number. They could actually grow faster than they've grown before, because if the digital play takes off on a massive scale, which I think it will, then as and when the physical play comes in, it does a bolt-on. So we'll probably have in 12 to 18 months, as restrictions on physical play get removed, a bigger company now. Now that's a very interesting phenomenon. The other thing which I want to mention is deep tech. You know, I think technology is going to play a very, very important role. We just invested actually on Friday in a company called Aether,
That
which
recent.
is that recent, a small company. And you know, it is a very deep technology company, which is in the space of making artificial limbs and smart artificial limbs in the bionic space. Now, this kind of company does not exist anywhere in the world. Why? Because it's able to deliver an artificial limb which is smart in nature, which enables hand movements with sensors, and it's priced at about, I would say, less than half of any competitor in the world.
Wow.
So we are talking about 60 million consumers in the world who possibly due to accidents in the agriculture field, which is what happens in India, upper limbs not being there. So here is a company who solved a real problem, which has not been solved before through technology into affordable, intelligent hands. We have another company in the area of active antibacterial catheters. We have another company in the space of color generation. Now, this is very interesting. Color generation is the prerogative of chemicals. And a large part of the color supplies in the world are dependent on China. The other way of generating color in deep technology is through vegetation, which occupies large tracts of land and requires water. So it's not very healthy for ecosystems. Now, this company based in Pune, and there are, by the way, only 3 companies in the world who do this, is generating color out of applying stress to bacteria. Now, this is a deep technology company, okay, and these are the companies who are equivalent. Unlike e-commerce, which happened 10 years after it happened in US and China, deep technology companies are coming up and they are at par with the world. So to my mind, technology is playing and will continue to play either in digital or in deep tech or in health tech, including fintech in the future, a very big role in solving real problems, which can build those companies into dominant brands in the country and subsequently grow them to a global platform. India is at now par in deep tech with many places in the world, namely Israel, India, and as US and China. In certain areas of deep tech, you'll find these companies coming up.
Okay. Thank you, Sudhir, for this wonderful answer. I think, and I see a lot of new participants joining in. I welcome you all to the first ever webinar that we are doing with Mr. Sudhir Sethi, who has been a veteran VC from 1983 batch of FMS, and we are proud to have him. A quick housekeeping rules for the new people who have joined in. If you have any questions, please click on the Q&A button and please type away your questions, and we will try our level best to pass on those and throw them at Sudhir, and let's see what he has to come up with. Sudhir, so going back to the summary, so as to say, which is that even during COVID or after COVID, tech is what will drive the change. And as you might be knowing that in Apeejay, we also have 3 of our own pharma companies, one being Walter Bushnell. And we have also been seeing the same change which you are talking about, that doctors, and we supply to a lot of doctors across India. And we see that they are not able to go to their hospitals initially. Even now they are going to hospitals, but the patients have trickled down to very few numbers. So in that case, we are also evaluating, and I'm happy to share with you that, and this is, we are seeing with a lot of other pharma companies as well, that they are starting the training of junior doctors by getting a senior doctor from AIMS, etc. So this change of webinars being happening is actually online learning is also picking up in a very good manner. So if you were to place your bets, where will you see the new sectors coming up in the next 2-3 years? Where will we see unicorns in India to come up, which were not there earlier?
So, you know, I think in the unicorns is just a milestone. First, it's a valuation milestone, and valuations keep going up and down. So we have to be very careful to take unicorn as a benchmark for success. And in my mind, unicorn is not a benchmark for success. There are many unicorns who go up and down in the market space. Unicorn is also a factor of supply and demand. If number of companies good, which are very good, have are less, and the number of suppliers and capital are more, then tendencies are that valuations will tend to run ahead of themselves. So I just want to state that a unicorn is not a benchmark for success. It may be one of the benchmarks. Having said that, there are about 25 to 30 unicorns right now, which signifies that they have grown to a billion level valuation in dollar terms. Some of these will survive, some of these will go international. Do we expect more? The answer is yes. I actually think a few things will happen. First and foremost, while building a company, if there's an excess of supply of capital, what happens is you tend to bloat. You tend to have a lot of cost structures which perhaps were not needed. If I look at pre-COVID, it was a reasonably good, let's say, run for India for the last 3 to 4 years. And many of our companies, admittedly, did build cost structures which were bloated, and they came down crashing because of the new scenario in revenues having gone down to zero in many cases. Overnight, it didn't take, it was not a slow gradient of going down. It was like
Absolutely.
overnight it went down to zero. Now, where will some of these companies who were expected to be unicorns, I think will now be careful. They probably will not be expected to be unicorn until they change their business models, until they change their revenue models, until they apply deep technology. Conventional retail, I think, is going to be very, very difficult right now. I don't expect masses of impulse buying happening, which it used to happen earlier. There may be peaks, because fashion is a good example. You know, expectedly everybody used to buy fashion, the need for fashion as well as impulse buying. But you know, once let's say the lockdown gets lifted, I'm sure there'll be an impulse buying which happens. But over a 2-3 year period, my guess is that impulse buying will go down overall. So to that extent, I think e-commerce will actually be more useful in the country. Having said that, I think the Kirana stores will be very useful. Please understand one thing in the last 18 months or last 2 months. Fundamentally, for groceries, what has kept the flag flying is there are 10 million Kirana stores in the country. They have serviced every single consumer in the country, irrespective of hardships. And the larger e-commerce companies have been patchy. Now, we must think about that the frontline Kirana store is, I would call, the COVID warrior right now. And they have been able to supply goods and services, which actually most large corporate commerces, traditional e-commerce or traditional retail could not supply. And it's very important to think about that this has to be built into your supply chain. Traditionally, what will happen now? Again, crystal ball is very difficult in terms of gazing here, but insurance, digital insurance, digital education, digital fitness, digital nutrition, digital investing, right, in the fintech sector overall, or anything digital is actually shooting up right now, and that will continue to shoot up. So I think in the next 5 years, there will be unexpected new businesses which will ramp up to a scale which has never happened before, but all of them will be deep technology. And some of them will be gaming, some of them will be consumer-led education businesses. And one criteria I do believe will happen is many of them will not just be India-based, they will be international.
Sure. But then we have one question which picks up from where you left. It is from Ayush Goyal. And Ayush asks us is how globalization will be impacted post-COVID-19 as we see Japan and other companies try to move away from China. And does that open up opportunities? I'm adding it over here, Ayush. Does that open up opportunities for startups in India to do better by looking at these no globalization opportunities, or low globalization or reverse globalization to say?
I think the political, and I'm not a political commentator, but what I do see is countries withdrawing into their own boundaries. They will want to make their own companies much, much larger. I also see that the dependence on China, as an example, is something which many countries and many companies will move away from. And because I think it just diversification of supply chain is very, very important. That is a phenomenally big opportunity as far as India is concerned. And I really believe it's a very large opportunity. And I think that's where speed and agility, right from the government to the state governments, to financial institutions, to government institutions at policy and execution level, and right down to the entrepreneur, we have to move extremely fast, okay? Extremely fast to tap at the corporate level companies who want to diversify from China and make sure that they come to India. That's an opportunity. And we may not have more than a year for that, by the way, because your competitors include Bangladesh, competitors include Vietnam, competitors include many, many other countries. Whoever is agile and speedy and recognizes that this is a very big business opportunity and moves fast will take care of that. My fear is we are not moving fast enough on that. And I think it's time we move very fast on that.
Okay, thank you, Sudhir, for this. Another question, and this is from an anonymous attendee, is that healthcare sector has immense opportunities, and how are you looking at healthcare sector? And if I would want to build on this, question is, how do you invest in such startups? So if I would to say, what are the top 3 things which Sudhir looks at to invest in startups? What will those be?
Well, there are 2 questions here. One is health tech and one is what do we look at in startups?
Absolutely.
As far as health tech is concerned, India is fundamentally, there are so many diseases where India tops the world in the top 3. They're right from cancer, right from ophthalmology related diseases, right from fitness, obesity, the whole area of diabetics and so on and so forth. So these, and even if you take, our family foundation, which my wife Shalini runs, she is specific in the hearing devices space or hearing disability space. There is a large percentage, I think 5 to 6% of India, which has hearing issues. And how do you solve them? But the number of audiometrists in the country is very small. The number of pathologists is very small. The number of doctors is very small. So how do you make medical assistance reach the masses is a very, very big challenge. The number of dentists is very small right now. So I think technology can play a very, very large part. It's on a scale of 10, we are not even at 0.1 where technology is playing a large part to reach the masses for their health. That's something which and there are policy decisions. I mean, government moved very fast in making sure that in prescriptions are accepted by from doctors, by pharmacies to supply medicines right now, because everybody's sitting at home, right? So you need policy changes. You need devices to be manufactured and designed in India. Have you noticed how fast many people have come up with ventilators in the last 8 weeks? So India has the capability. It's not that it doesn't have the capabilities, but it needs an environment which nurtures this and produces this and markets this in India, and not only the India, but also the world. So that's my healthcare. It's a very large opportunity, and any company who is large in India on healthcare can become large worldwide overall. As far as what do we look at, I think your second question was on
investment criteria.
Investment criteria. We look at 4 things.
4 things. Okay.
The quality of entrepreneur. We like serial entrepreneurs. Okay, because serial entrepreneurs have done it again, have done it earlier, so that they have the experience and the wisdom, even if they've not succeeded in the first or second entrepreneur stint. So we like very high quality entrepreneurs. We like the entrepreneurial business plan to be solving a problem which is endemic to India and has not been solved before, but can be solved by using technology. Okay, so this is very, very important as the second criteria. We like the third criteria to see whether that company can be built into a reasonably dominant brand, ideally number 1 or number 2 in the country, ideally number 1, and then can it be built into a global footprint. So today, for instance, half our companies have a global footprint in 30 countries. So what is a solution which has been solving a problem using technology in India is actually valid worldwide. A very good example I'll take is a company called Cropin. Cropin, if you look at the farm sector in India, right? The average farm sector holding is a few acres. I think 2 acres or something. That means anything you try to do perpetually is a problem,
Yeah.
because you can't have economies of scale at a few acres. So, but that farmer needs technology to know whether his crop is doing well. If there's a disease coming in, he doesn't have the science behind to know. How does he do? Ideally, visual technologies can be used. Take a picture and go somewhere into an artificial intelligence cloud, and back comes a result in a few milliseconds that, there is a disease which by the way, this is the organic
Again,
pesticide
deep
which
tech at play.
deep tech has played a part. Now, Cropin, by the way, has covered through satellite 5 million acres of land, not just in India, but outside the country. And they are supplying this to suppliers of farm inputs like seeds, like fertilizers, so that those inputs can be very targeted at those farmers in a particular land area. So there is a delivery period of, and they're using a satellite technology using AI, okay, can deliver to the farmer, which is what this company is doing, how the crop will happen, because it can also monitor crop patterns, it can monitor soil quality, it can monitor the whole space of weather, how it is going to happen. That is amazing. By the way, an entrepreneur is doing it. There's no large company doing this overall. So this is how technology can solve real issues in India and on a global basis. So these are our 4 big thrusts of how we qualify to invest.
And I'm really having this, loving this conversation today, because now we are moving from Curefit to Cropin to healthcare in between. And when we were talking about the 4 things which Sudhir looks at, I could not help but think of a lot of companies where you have invested in. And I was just, mentally putting a tick mark against all 4. For example, you look at Myntra, ex-co-founder, and now with Curefit. But we have a question from Saurabh Jot Singh. This might be quite interesting to you. So what Saurabh asks, is there an expectation that there will be a shift in consumer behavior in terms of viewing necessities as good to have or aspirational products? And how should startups focus on that? And do they have to, if for example we were talking about the bolt-on revenues or bolt-on products earlier, do you think they are disrupting themselves as well?
Do I expect a consumer behavior change from now onwards? The answer is a very big yes. I think the COVID pandemic has brought to the mind of the consumer an enormous amount of change already. Okay. First is the adoption of digital. I mean, in 8 weeks, we have seen the adoption of digital by all age groups go up. Okay, so that's a very big change, and I truly believe it will be long lasting. It is not going to be short term.
There will be a new normal.
Yes, it's a new normal, which not only in India but worldwide. And we are seeing the green shoots of that in monetization already happening in the country and outside the country. Second thing is diversification of supply chain. Okay, that's a very big this thing. Coming back to consumer changes are also on how much of impulse buying will happen. I think consumers in the medium run at least will become extremely sensitive to what they buy, at what price they buy, and what's the quality. Impulse buying will go down, whereas essential buying will go up. If yesterday I used to go into a shop and say, hey, I like this great t-shirt which I haven't seen before, or a jacket, that impulse buying I think will be much lower overall. I think the other thing which is there is that technology will continue to play a deep part in every single product right now. You will find antibacterial clothes coming up. You will find nanotechnology being used much more than what it was earlier. So I think those issues will come up because this is a new norm.
Okay. Sudhir, picking up from your antibacterial one, do you think that companies which are, you mentioned, were in the red zone, high touch physical spaces, restaurants, food delivery, food tech, and so on, what are your thoughts about the same? And how would you advise those companies in the red zone to do? How would you advise, what would be your advice to those entrepreneurs who are seeing zero revenues right now? Nothing is moving.
it's a discovery. Food is an essential item. Everybody wants to eat food and nobody will stop eating food. Now, so effectively, by the way, large amount of home cooking has started. So I think there's a suppression of demand. Now, will this suppression of demand pick up as lockdown opens up? The answer is yes. I think it will pick up because people will start going to offices. However, I think people have already started paying more attention to how the food is cooked. Fundamentally, the quality of the food, the norms of safety and the norm of health, which are taken in terms of ensuring that where the food comes from. Most people did not bother where the food comes from, so if there's a marketplace, let's say people like Swiggy and Zomato, I think those restaurants where they pick up, they will have to now start saying how healthy and how safe my environment is overall. And so to that extent, I see consumers shifting their preferences of food sources, of cooked food sources, to places where the incidence of bacteria, incidence of health repercussions are going down. There will be a shift, which also means that those eating joints which are unable to live up to those qualities possibly will not survive.
Thank you, Sudhir. And I'm seeing a lot of questions which the theme seems remain almost the same, is to what will happen with the funding? How should entrepreneurs who are thinking of approaching VC funds right now and they were building up their metrics for the same, what should they do right now? Should they look at other opportunities? And I'm seeing questions from Karan, I'm seeing questions from Gautam Baliga, I'm seeing questions from Sakshi on this. So I am assuming, and we have data to the fact that VCs do have a lot of dry powder in India. So it's not that VCs have run out of money, but then how will the change come in the VC side as to, will they start evaluating startups in a different manner? And if I were to be an entrepreneur reaching out to VCs right now, what should I do?
Well, entrepreneurship is an endemic, is a pandemic by itself. Okay? A positive pandemic. And I don't think entrepreneurship will go down. Entrepreneurship does not come by planning. Entrepreneurship comes by an intuition and a hunch that, look, this is something which I want to do. And by the way, I've got a solution which nobody else has, or a few people have. So I don't think entrepreneurship will go down. I think there will be a delay. There is dry capital available. There'll also be polarization of capital. Capital initially will tend to go to companies who are doing very well, who have the potential to become market leaders. So in the short run, venture investors will focus on their existing portfolio and then start coming back to new entrepreneurs as such, in the seed stage, or Series A's will happen, Series B's will happen. So I expect a delay of 3 to 6 months until the lockdown, and our VCs also see how lockdowns are being lifted, how business models are changing, and is there stability to that revenue model. But I do not see these things going down unless there's a really, really big challenge in terms of the pandemic going on for a long, long time overall. So, but there are models and there are entrepreneurs who have very real ideas and very real solutions to solving real problems in this world. And I think those entrepreneurs will get funded.
Okay. So to summarize, if I understood this correctly, entrepreneurship is a pandemic. Rick, your advice to entrepreneurs is to keep building, and when they build something which is of value to customers, VC money will follow.
VC money will follow, and I think the other thing is angel money will also follow. There is a lot of capital. Family wealth in India, I was reading a report, is about 2 trillion. Okay, and that's something which is large. So there is capital out there. I think what will get compressed is valuations. I think it's very important not to bloat costs. It's much more important not to overspend in the market space, but build companies frugally, because the pressure on becoming profitable in a shorter time frame will be much, much higher, obviously. And those days, perhaps, at least for the short to medium term, are gone, where you could continue to make losses and build companies. I think VCs are obviously, when there's a supply chain of capital which is very large, then VCs also will come back to the norm.
Two questions for you over here. How do you define short and medium term? And do you think that some VCs will also be under stress right now? And will they also go bust?
No. So look, let me put it this way. VCs have a fiduciary responsibility to their investors. Okay, we manage other people's money. And to that extent, it's very important. So what are we doing right now? We have gone back to analyzing all our companies. We have done what is called stress tests. We've done not one, we've done 3 types of stress tests in discussion with the entrepreneur. We are not independent of the entrepreneur. Our goal is, as Dr. Singla mentioned, outsized returns to our investors. However, we cannot do it without the entrepreneur. So our goal is to help the entrepreneur move into a space where he or she can become successful overall. And that requires hard work. So that discussion is going on, and VCs are under stress. So are entrepreneurs. But that doesn't mean that we will not break out of this fold or this mold. And I'm again saying that while this environment of cost reduction, getting to profitability, I think it's an important one. It's good to do it right now. Some companies may not come out, but I do believe that whoever changes rapidly will come out.
Thank you, Sudhir, again. ROI is the ideal before which all of us bow down. So I think that has again, this COVID has again brought that out. We have another interesting question from Sakshi.
Yeah, can I just mention one more point?
Please go ahead.
While we talk about building companies, while we talk about ROI, etc., we also have to take notice that there are many gig workers. There are thousands and thousands of people who are due to cost reduction, due to many other these things are affected because of job losses or lowered income. I think it's also important that the venture industry, either individually or together, takes care of those in whatever way they can. So we have allocated capital for people if they are stressed in our portfolio. The VC industry has come under the ACT program to also do the same thing overall. So it's very important that we don't lose sight of that. It's we cannot be building castles while there is a set of people who are being hurt negatively. It's important for us to make sure that they also come out.
No, I think what you just did, you stole the words of Sakshi Agarwal. Her question was your ideas on how can shared economy sectors revive post-COVID, and this has been this sort of questions about Ola, Uber, Rapido, about what travel and tourism industries can do, startups in those has been coming up again and again. So any thoughts on the same? Shared economy and travel and tourism.
Yeah, so proxy is a good proxy is China, which is 3 months ahead of India and US in terms of what's happening and how things are picking up there. I truly believe that mass travel will take a long time to pick up. Like it's happening in China. I think, for instance, metro travel will take some time because metro is packed with people. And I don't think people are comfortable in doing that overall. So who will travel? I found that, look, I used to travel 15, 20 days a month, and half of that was possibly not required. So with restrictions, with the fear of, catching the virus, etc., generally travel will go down. But I do believe mass transit travel will definitely take a long time. And when I say a long time, it may take 1 year to 1.5 years in full lockdown removal to even reach 60 to 70% of it, because there's an inherent fear that we should be taking safeguards. I think what will happen, and that applies to even I think Olas and Ubers of the world, wherever there is, I think if there's one passenger traveling with one driver, you can actually isolate the driver. I just saw a car today, which was a medical emergency car, which had actually done a jugaad of putting plastic around the driver overall. And that was at a local hospital called Sakrama, just nearby in Bangalore. But mass travel, 3 people traveling together, 4 people traveling together, software industry going and picking up 4 people in cars, I think is out. What I do believe will happen is single rides will increase.
Okay.
Companies like Bounce, I think those will bounce back very fast because it's safer for one person to travel.
Bounce or Yulu and the likes.
And the likes, yeah. And so yeah, I think those changes will be massive overall. Air travel will definitely go down. There's no question about it. Train travel will go down.
Sudhir, what are your thoughts on consolidation happening now, since we are discussing about challenges in the ecosystem for a year or more than that? Do you see acqui-hiring picking up? Do you see M&As picking up, startups being acquired by other startups where they can grow more together? Do you think that's happening?
I see M&A very active now. Some of our large companies who have capital are actively looking for gaps in technology and gaps in consumer demand, product market fits to be filled up, especially in the digital space, as I mentioned earlier. So companies who perhaps don't have a capital runway and they need the capital, I think it's good for them to merge into a larger entity and not only survive but also to grow. So next 12 months, I do see a lot of small and medium-sized M&As happen. One of our companies has just completed an acquisition on Thursday or Friday, which was going on for 2-3 months, but we just continued on because we think that was to diversify supply chain from China. So M&A will happen due to companies running out of capital. M&As will happen due to diversification by companies from China to be built into India, okay, or any other countries overall. And that is fundamentally an active market for the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay. We have another question, and it's more of professional advice question from Shobhit Sharma. Question is, what advice would you give to young professionals who have been let go of their companies, or MBA and engineering students who are just passing out?
It's a difficult one. I think choose your companies. If you're obviously MBA students, some of them may want to start up an entrepreneurial section. I think that's great. There's never a good time to start something. It's more risky right now. Make sure you have enough capital to do the needful.
But never let a good crisis go to waste.
Well, I would move away from, let's say, standard phrases here. I'll say, look, if you think you have a problem, go to which you are solving and which needs and deserves to be funded, go to the right people. There's enough angels in the country. There's enough VCs in the country who are still looking for good ideas to be funded. There's absolutely no issue at all overall. As far as jobs are concerned, they will be far and few, but my strong recommendation will be traditional jobs are out of the window. Okay. I mean, I would strongly say rev up your tech, go to companies which are fundamentally growing in the digital space. And that doesn't mean digital advertising. I think digital advertising in India is very small right now. It just means if there is a bank which is using technology to grow rapidly, I think that bank is better than a technology which is a bank which is not. Okay, don't go to traditional banks. Choose your companies where technology usage for managing consumers, for building the company, for processes and for supply chain management are far, far higher. And that requires from MBA students passing out and MBA institutes a different kind of a review overall. And those are the companies which are going to be hiring.
Thank you, Sudhir, for this. I think, Shobhit, we have answered your question over here. Next, we are picking up a question from Indrani Das. Her question is, what is your take on event and BTL marketing startups?
Event and?
BTL marketing, below the line marketing startups. Because as we understand, events have almost stopped. So what is your take?
Events have stopped, but this is a digital event, what we are going through right now with FMS. So our digital events going to increase world over. Zoom stock prices are shot up in the market space. Absolutely. So digital events, digital communication, digital B2B communication, digital B2C communication, I think look at those. Those are very, very important. And those don't cost that much. It's not necessary. What's the big realization by us by us as investors and by consumers and companies. It's not necessary for people to meet face to face all the time to do business. So how to build trust when you've never met? So digital events, to my mind, is very, very important. Businesses, not because you have something you want to buy and I have something I want to sell. On top of that is the layer called trust. How can I build trust and how can I build a relationship? So the biggest challenge to my mind is, can organizations specialize in enabling buyers and sellers to build trust? And that's a big one. We've never done this before in our lives.
That means that there is an opportunity for people who are thinking sharply to create businesses which were never thought of.
Yes.
Sumit, we have a question from Sumit Jasoria. If you want to skip this, please feel free. Question is, do you think the way MBA education works in India will also need to change to create leaders and workforce for a newer India?
Look, I don't think that applies to India. Anything in India which is working well has to change because these are the times, and MBA education constantly will keep changing as we move forward overall. I do believe that MBA education has given us the knowledge and the skills to be where we are today. But time cycles are now getting shorter for building companies. Product life cycles are shorter. Product market fits have to be going faster. Overall, I do believe that yes, there are some changes which are required. Enormous, and in fact, Dr. Singla and I were talking about it, I think yesterday. Enormous amount of industry and management institute interaction is very, very important. And I may qualify this in saying enormous amount of new industry and management education, because the crux of success is on innovation and agility, on identifying new business models and revenue models and new products and services. That's where corporates will lag behind. Corporates have capital, but they will lag behind on these issues. Entrepreneurs have less capital, but they will forge ahead, continue to forge ahead on parameters of agility, parameters of new product development, new services, new technologies. And to that extent, that entrepreneurial element has to be brought out much more in MBA classes right now. I think MBA institutions are more towards, let me place a person in the corporate world. I would like to see 75% of an MBA class going into entrepreneurial world. And to me, that shift can be done by, I think, curriculum remaining the same, but bringing more interface with the new economy.
Thank you, Sudhir, for the same. We have a question just picking up on that, and we understand that you have a hard stop at 4, so we have 7 minutes to go. Please allow us for 1 or 2 minutes of more time of yours. Question is from Arpit. Arpit's question is, will India, and Arpit, I'm rephrasing your question, please do not mind. Is India likely to move to the gig economy model more because people see that they want to reduce their fixed costs, they want to have more variable work done? So do you see more of Fivers and other such companies coming up in India?
I see a large movement. India, with such a large young population who's looking for jobs, that cannot be met by large industry. Let's be very clear. And I think that was clear 10 years back. Okay. So small entrepreneurs, let's look at it this way, 10 million Kirana shops.
Sure.
Each Kirana shop has the owner and has at least 2 people working in them, which means Kirana shops are employing 30 to 40 million people in the country, right? That's an enormous number. That's an enormous number. So the presence of Kirana stores gives employment to so many people. That's your gig worker, I presume, right?
Absolutely.
So if you want, and how many people are likely to come up in the next 10 years into the job market? It's hundreds of millions. It's 300-400 million people who will come up. So that cannot be met by building only large corporations. It can only be met by entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, by the way, does not mean VC funded entrepreneurship alone. A bulk of the entrepreneurship is not VC funded, okay? Where credit lines have to go through overall. A Kirana store which does 15 lakhs a month needs credit line of couple of lakhs a month because he has to pay his FMCG supplier. So credit lines to SME are extremely crucial to build that small enterprise. And I would really, really like to see at least 100 million more small enterprise coming up in the next 5 years, because that would mean giving jobs to at least 200 million people.
Uh, on this, Kirana stores from a lot of people, Gaurav, Chirag, uh, Abhishek, Saurabh, we have a similar question, which is about Facebook and geo platforms deal. Does that throw up opportunities and challenges for startups?
I think at the very high level, the Facebook geo transaction to me is a very, what I call a GDP additive transaction. Okay, let me explain why. It's the first time in the history of corporate India, there is an Indian player, Geo Reliance, which can now potentially have access to 800 million people on the net. If you look at Geo, their access to consumers on the mobile is about 30-35%, which means about 350 million people. Facebook with WhatsApp has another 350 million, 400 million people. That amounts to 800 million people, with overlaps maybe 700 or 650 million people. There is no company in the country who has access to that many digital users potentially. It won't happen overnight. What will this enable? This enables suddenly a large market where you can build a large consumer company in India, which could never be built before. Okay, let's be clear. Myntra was built with 20 million people transacting on the net. Flipkart was built with 100 million people transacting on the net. And today, actual number of people transacting on the net by any optimistic number could be 150 to 200 million, right? We are talking about potentially 500-600 million people transacting on the net. That's a very different ball game. That means we can actually build large digital plays in the country. The only large payment player in the country is Paytm. If WhatsApp comes into payment, we have another large player, which is very good for the country. Interestingly, both of them underpinned on UPI. If you look at B2B businesses, B2B businesses need a stable interface of infrastructure internet. And if Reliance Jio and the Facebook combination with capital coming in from Facebook can provide that, it's a massive winner. So this to me, in terms of reach, is possibly even bigger than the Walmart Flipkart transaction, because that could reach a few million customers, let's say 200 million customers. This is potentially 700 to 800 million consumers in the market space. At the sentiment level, it's very positive. It's, the three large contiguous markets in the world are US, China, and India. And India is the third largest contiguous consumer market in the world. If you look at the sentiment, which was going extremely negative up till the time this was announced, suddenly it becomes positive. Suddenly there's this large Facebook investment coming into Geo, and that's turned the tables. So we think that sentiment will carry a long way in international and domestic investors looking at private capital. The buzzword is private capital. Public capital is always been coming to India, public markets. But it's important to have capital accumulation in private markets, because private market capital builds companies and builds small enterprises, whereas public markets don't build new companies. That's a layer which is a punting which happens on top of existing companies, right? So fundamentally, if we want India to succeed, this is a phenomenal sentiment which has been introduced, and we are seeing results of that positive already within the first few days after this announcement was made, of investors globally talking to us and saying, this is interesting, tell me more. Okay. I think we need to capitalize more and more on this.
Thank you, Sudhir. I assume that a lot of people's questions have been answered once for this quickly. Sudhir, I'll take this up as the last question because I know that we have almost run out of time, and then I'll hand it over to Singla sir. Question is, and this is from 3 anonymous attendees, all of them have the same question. If I'm an MBA student, how do I prepare to become a VC professional?
Just ring up one of the VCs and say, I want to join you.
So you know who to call if you are from FMS, and even otherwise, we have one of the veterans VCs with us. Thank you, Sudhir, for giving us all your time. We understand that these are tough times and you are super busy right now. but thank you from your alma mater, from FMS, for coming on board. Singla sir, handing over to you now,
Thank
please.
you, Zuhaib. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure, sir. Just waiting for Singla sir to come online.
Hi. Yeah, this was a wonderful discussion. Sudhir, I'm educated, and I'm sure that all my 175 participants who have been there have also been educated. A lot of questions have been asked, and I'm sure that we will have another occasion to answer so many more questions. Very quickly, this was wonderful learning. Focus on everything E. Focus on fintech, healthcare, BPO. Focus on, you need to focus on digital, you need to focus on deep technology, you need to focus on global footprint, you need to act fast. Kirana stores, don't write them off. Essential buying is going to go up. VCs as well as entrepreneurs are under stress. So many learnings in one small session. Thank you very much, Sudhir, for taking your time. It is a wonderful, very meaningful investment, spending time on Saturday, Sunday afternoon with you. And we hope to get you back once again, as per your convenience, to answer the rest of the questions and educate us much more on the future of businesses, future of venture capital investments, and future of startups. One word, of course, which I would expect that most of us will carry: digital is the future, deep technology is the future. We are grateful to you for taking your time, and we are also, thanks Zuhaib, you have been a wonderful host. I think you handled it very well. Nitin and Dheeraj for all putting in all the efforts, and we are grateful to Ria as well as Aditya. We have some faculty members also who joined us. I could see Garima Gupta, Dr. Garima Gupta, who is in the marketing area. I could see
Hello, ma'am.
Dr. Devidit, who is in the area of production operations. I could also see Sudhir, some of our class fellows, our batchmates. Dr. Nalin Jain is there. Mr. Hardeep Sodhi, Barrister Hardeep Sodhi is there. And Rajneesh Virmani, I could see, and many more names I could see, but of course the list is very, very long. To all the faculty members, all the batchmates, all other participants, members of executive committee who are on the right now online. And of course, before we close, thanks to Nitin and Dheeraj for putting in all the efforts from our side. Wish you a wonderful health. Pray for a wonderful good health for you and your family. Please stay home and stay safe. Thank you very much. We hope to meet sometime very, very soon. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sudhir. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.